Hey guys, so in this video, we are going to talk about what a linear equation is, as well as one of the most important things you're going to learn in your middle school math and algebra career. We're going to learn about something called the slope-intercept form of a line. And then we're going to go over how we actually graph these linear equations. So the first part, we're actually going to look at equations. And then the second part, we're going to look at graphs and how it relates to the first part of what we talk about. So a linear equation is an equation that when we graph it, it makes a straight line. So in the previous video, we went over all the different kinds of slopes, and we talked about if we're working with graphs that have straight lines, those are called linear graphs. So we form those linear graphs by using a linear equation. And so when you're looking at an equation, if it has a form that looks like this, so the form, we use a lot of different variables. I'm going to explain what they all mean, but if it looks like this, y equals mx plus b, this is what we call the slope intercept form, because from this particular format, we can identify what the slope and what the intercept is of the equation or of the line. So sometimes we can do stuff with these equations that we can figure out what the slope of the graph is going to be just by looking at this particular equation. So you this may look a little weird right now, but if I put in some numbers into this equation, I'm going to give myself a little space because I am going to go up here and label something. Let's say I have y equals 3x plus 5. Okay. This looks very similar to equations that we've worked to solve, but instead of having 3x plus 5 equals some sort of number, I'm throwing in this y here. And you'll notice that I have an x and a y in my equation, and that's going to coordinate with x and y points on a graph. So if I have an equation that looks like this, or I could even have an equation that looks like this, okay? This is that slope-intercept form. So M in the slope-intercept form, this is the slope. This number right here, this coefficient, this BFF of X is the slope of our line. It's how steep the line is. B, and I'm actually gonna even kind of put a square around this, okay? This is our y-intercept. This is our y-intercept. This is where our line in our graph intercepts that y-axis, where it crosses that y-axis, okay? Now we use the form y equals mx plus b. I kind of also like to think about it as plus or minus b because it could be negative. I'm just gonna put negative, could happen, but you could just put could be negative, okay? So it could be a positive or a negative. Depending on where the line intersects the y-axis. It could be up in those positive sides or sections or in the negative sections. So if I look at these two equations, okay, I can just automatically identify what my slope and what my y-intercept is going to be without even graphing it. We're going to talk about how we would graph these in a moment, but just at a glance, I can tell, oh, this is going to be my slope, this is going to be my y-intercept just by using this form. So in this first equation, 3 is our slope, and our y-intercept is going to be positive 5. So positive 5, and I'm going to abbreviate y-intercept. I'm just going to put y-int for intercept. So 3 is our slope, 5 is our y-intercept. So I know that this graph is going to have a slope of 3, and it's going to intersect the y-axis at 5. So that's up in the positives. This next equation, 1/2 is my slope. So the slope is a fraction. And -2, we're going to attach the negative with it. That is our y-intercept. So our graph is going to intersect the y-axis at -2. So just from this slope-intercept form, we can identify what our slope and our y-intercept are, okay? Now, let's look at, if we're given an equation, how we can actually go about graphing it. And it's actually pretty simple. We're pretty much going to use the slope-intercept form as a formula, and we're going to plug in values for x and get what our y value should be. So we'll choose points for X, get our values for Y by like solving. We're going to do what's called evaluate the expression. We'll solve, and then we'll just go plot the points that we make. So I'm going to draw myself a section. Okay. So this is how we graph linear equations. So how we graph linear equations. So step number one, we're going to choose our values for X. Okay. We want to try and include, when we choose values for X to plug in to our equation, we want to try to choose or include a negative and a positive for X. So try to include a positive and negative. So we don't only want to just pick positive numbers. We don't only want to just pick negative numbers. We want to try to include one of each. You'll see why when we graph. Then what we're going to do is we're going to make a table, like an XY table or like a T-chart. And then we're going to graph. That's it. It's like a 3-step process. Okay. So let's say we are given the equation, the linear equation, I should say. Let's say, well, why don't we go use the one from above? Y equals 3x plus 5. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose 3 values for X. So I like to choose small numbers because I don't want to work with big numbers. So if I'm going to start off, I'm going to choose -1. I'm going to choose the number 0. 0 is an easy number to work with. And then I'm going to choose a positive. So I'm just going to pick +1. Okay. You can choose any values for X that you want. I personally like to choose smaller numbers, and we want to try to make sure we include a positive and a negative. So I included those there. So to figure out what our Y values are, is we're going to take our X values that we picked and just plug them into our equation. So if I say that X is -1, then that means 3 times -1 plus 5 is going to tell me my Y value. And if I plug in all the other ones into the equation, that'll get my other Y values. So 3 times 1 plus 5. So let me solve. So 3 times -1 is -3. -3 plus 5 is 2. So if X is -1, Y is 2, according to this equation. 3 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 5 is 5. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 5 is 8. So I have now created 3 points, and I have my X and Y coordinate. So to graph it, all I'm going to do is take these 3 points and graph them on the coordinate plane. Okay, so I'm going to draw myself a little baby coordinate plane. And I noticed that my Y value goes up to 8. So I'm going to make sure I label this side of it all the way up to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So now I'm just going to go plot those points. So when X is at -1, Y is at 2. So here's -1, here's 2. So that point goes there. When X is 0, so that's here along this Y axis, Y is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. This is where our line is going to intersect the Y axis. So this is our Y intercept. One way when you're looking at a table, if X is 0, whatever the Y value is, that's the Y intercept, which, boom, based on what we just learned up above, is the case. We just said that was our Y intercept. So it's even more true here now that we see it in the graph. Okay, and the last point, 1, 8. So here's 1, and I'm going to go all the way up to 8. So here are my 3 points. I kind of, if I need to, I kind of like to use like another sheet of paper, or like if you have a ruler, to just try to make the straightest line possible. So I take like a piece of paper and like angle it with the 3 points. I think that's hopefully pretty good. Let me angle it like that. And then I'm going to draw as straight of a line possible as I can. So this is the linear graph of 3x plus 5. And I can see that my slope is 3. I can check to see if it's 3. If I do that rise over run, I could like see, okay, from this point to this point, do I have to go up 3 and over 1? So I have to go 1, 2, 3 and over 1. Yes, that's my slope. When we get more into even more into graphing, we'll kind of continue that, but this is how it looks. And all we did was choose some values for X, plug them in to the equation to get our Y values. And then we took these as coordinates and plotted them on our coordinate plane. So we took this linear equation and now put it in its graph form. And if I wanted to put a graph back into a linear equation, what I would do is I would take points from the line, create a table. And in the next video, we're going to talk about if we're given tables, excuse me, if we're given tables, how we can look at this information in a table and put it back into a linear equation. So that's what the next video is all about. This one was just about how we graph as well as this slope intercept form. So check out the next video to see how we take graphs and put them back into their linear equations.